It's Pete from Cheap Homesteading, and today we're going to cut some firewood. I have neglected cutting firewood last year. I was cutting it, but my focus was more on clearing land, and it ended up that I just didn't get as much firewood cut as I should have. So we're going to head back to the sugar shack where I have some wood already cut down and in lengths, and it's been drying there for a while. So that's going to supplement just a little bit. But first we're going to sharpen the axe, and I have found that it seems like in the homesteading community that there's a lot of opinions how axes should be sharpened, and I think sometimes we just got to rise above it, because I don't have enough time in the world to sharpen it like most of these people sharpen their axe. I'm from the school of get her done, and honestly, if you sharpen an axe to a razor's edge, when you hit a rock, there's a chunk gone off because it's so fine. The metal is so fine at the end, the chunk is gone and it's not as sharp. So having an axe sharp, but you can actually have an axe too sharp. And on top of it, I don't have enough time to spend a whole day sharpening my axe. I need to sharpen it and then get out there and cut some firewood. This is my favorite axe. It's a Mastercraft axe. It's a 5-pound. It is not very old, but it is probably at least 15 years, maybe 20 years old. So I mean, it's better than what you would purchase right now for sure. And I like the taper. I don't know what it is, but this taper really splits nicely. You can get an axe that just doesn't split properly, and a lot of it's to do with the taper here, the distance from when it starts spreading out. Because the farther it's in, you got leverage. So if that's correct, you have a good splitting axe. So right here, we're just going to give it a little bit of a cleanup, and I'm going to show you how I sharpen axes. First thing you do is wear safety glasses. Okay, so we're just using a grinder. A lot of people use fancy files and emery stones and all kinds of stuff like that. But realistically, the voyageurs were a group of people, French Canadians, that would go up the St. Lawrence River, and they were mainly trappers and traders and all that kind of stuff. And all they had was a file. So if you want to look at how it was done properly back then, probably that was proper, just to use a file. But we've made it so much more complicated. So I'm not going to use a file, but I'm going to use a grinder. You don't want to make this angle too elongated. You don't want this to get too thin. I like making about half a thumbnail edge, so I will try to go like this. So basically, you have to envision the blade hitting this section. You don't want to go much past that. You don't want to make this tapered too much, because the shock of this hitting this little bit of a raised spot, it gives it a jolt, and then it comes down through. If you make it too fine, it doesn't get that jolt, and I find it doesn't as good. So I start off by just using the grinder. And I go do the other side. Okay, so now I'm going to get a little block and a little bit of sandpaper, and we're just going to clean up the edge, and then that's it. So what I got is a little bit of emery cloth, and I put it on a block. And make sure you don't go like this. You're going to cut your hand. You kind of go sideways. Okay, so there you go. There's a nice continuous edge. If I just drag my finger, it doesn't cut it, but I can tell that it is sharp. If I pushed even just lightly, I would end up cutting my finger. And I find that's about how sharp you need it. You don't need to spend a ton of time sharpening an axe to have an effective axe to go out and split some wood. So let's go out and try it. I am going to split a few sticks of wood, and you're going to have a good idea how well it splits. It is not rocket science. Some people will try to make it that it is, but I am part of the school of get her done, and you can't get her done standing in the shop all day sharpening your axe. So let's take a look here. Okay, let's try this one. This has got a bit of a curve in it. There's one. Ooh, that one was hard. See, I hit it right next to the knot. Oh, there's one more. Let's see that one. That went pretty good. I'll cut a bit more in round 2 with the axe. Okay, so here we go, round 2. Ooh, that's a hard one. Now I'm gonna go the other direction. Okay, let's try this one. That went good. One more. Okay, let's try this one. And then I'll go here. There we go. So let's see, round 3. Okay, so there you go. I'm pretty happy with how it splits. In ways, I think if it was sharper, it wouldn't have done as good of a job, because there's definitely stones in the ground here, and I hit a few of them, and I don't even see marks on the axe. So if I had that to a razor point, I can imagine that I probably would have chipped the edge off, and then that whole section doesn't chop as well. So you know what? If you have the time, you can go and you can sharpen them really well. But I don't have the luxury of that. So this is, I think I'm pretty happy with this. I'm not going to change the way I sharpen my axes. So you guys have a good one.